It's a little bit early, but I am gonna use this later on. I'm gonna do the video on this individual here. In this very short video, it's not about him only, it's about more than him. I am gonna make a video on Ashkenazi Jews pertaining to the issue of Ukraine, something I already have discussed, and because of what picture immediately again changed. Every time I do it, they do immediately a correction. Donald Trump in fact claimed me there might necessarily be even 2 meetings with Vladimir Putin, and what Donald Trump had on his mind was a desperate attempt to screw me up. Something I have written about yesterday before the midnight. I wrote this article right here. It's a very obvious thing what they do. They are not doing this the first time. They haven't done this stuff the first time. They had done it before. And Donald Trump actually believes there will be a 3rd round of doing this kind of stuff. There will be a 3rd round of doing this stuff. They were literally using journalists who met at the White House for the press release with Donald Trump to destroy Ukraine. This was a yesterday post, and boy, they immediately changed the whole thing. What's good about my blog now, I made sure I would have timestamp also displayed right on the bottom of it. And so that's the kind of stuff that you guys are going to have to, I'm going to do it for you. I'm going to post you when I published whatever I published and how I was follow up by Donald Trump immediately after I published the stuff. On the top you only have the date and day, but on the bottom you do have a timestamp. This was how I answered to Zelenskyy. There you go. This is the post that got Donald Trump on a thin ice. This one right here. I released a lot of news about United States of America is crime involvement against me, genocide, involvement in genocide against me. And Donald Trump was just building a moment for Vladimir Putin. He just continued to build a moment. And another person who started to ride the wave with Donald Trump even gesturing that he's going to meet Vladimir Putin inside of Russia was Vladimir Zelenskyy, who started to negotiate on. He basically started to participate in a future meeting between Putin and Donald Trump. And he did so by casting his voice where he had no right to cast one. Putin and Donald Trump started to negotiate about territorial deal in respect to Ukraine. And so unless you have your own interest in division of Ukraine, I see no point on why you would want to participate in absolutely any way. Why would you even want to express this type of conference meeting if you have no interest in it? Because initially Zelenskyy was hiding behind no interest in it, rejecting everything, and so on. Then, when I continued to attack United States of America, and even suggested that it's not worth to die for as an American in Ukraine, suggested that world will be worse off with Ukraine liberated. Because of special Illuminati interests inside of Ukraine that will be counterproductive. And I did describe, I broke everything in a micro issues they discussed during MK Ultra. Counterproductive for the people in the Western Hemisphere, because Illuminatis will get whatever they cannot get, just like in my case, just like they have done with me. It's the stuff they're going to do with Ukraine. In that moment, Donald Trump was willing to meet Vladimir Putin to discuss real estate, brokerage, Ukrainian, literally inside of Moscow, inside of Russia. That's what Donald Trump later changed into, that he did not know that Alaska is part of United States of America, that he thought that it was a part of Russia. That's how we started this game. And before you know, Zelenskyy was on board again. This did not happen the first time. This shit already repeated with Zelenskyy on several other occasions with Donald Trump and Zelenskyy. They always tried, if it's got something to do with what they are extremely well familiarized, topics, and meetings at the same time with the Russian side. This is the stuff they refer to as talks, peace talks. They definitely tried their best to undermine the peace issues with a real estate brokerage. They always did, and it was no different this time. It was totally no different this time. Identical issue, again, the same shit, the same thing. Here's the deal, folks. I'm going to put you down dates and time when whatever I publish that is noteworthy. So you can see this yourself. Here's the deal. I'm going to put one more link right here. This one is dedicated to Khodorkovsky. This guy here. These are all Ashkenazi Jews. Every one of them is an Ashkenazi Jew. Absolutely every one of them is an Ashkenazi Jew. Here's the deal, folks. I'm not the first one who have come to this conclusion. People came to this conclusion during MK Ultra background talks. It was other people who came to this conclusion. Russia and Ukraine are two extremely different countries, with Russia with about 3 times as much population as they have it in Ukraine. And I don't know, is it 2.5 times bigger than United States of America, Russia? I think it's something like that, isn't it? So that makes Ukraine, all through the biggest European country, Ukraine, it makes Ukraine like a fly on the wall when compared to what you see right here. It's Russia. That's how huge the Russia is. Now, Russia is extremely wealthy country. Oil, gas, etc., etc. Not that its citizens would live wealthy lifestyles, because the money is thrown directly into a military arsenal, basically into wars. But this is an extremely wealthy country when compared to sanctioned, even from NATO membership in 2008, Ukraine. This is the country, Ukraine was the country that was left for bits, that was left for dead. And I thoroughly have described everything that went on inside of our house behind the curtain with Vladimir Zelenskyy and foremost Vladimir Putin, who ended up begging. He ended up literally begging American side to please help Russia. Because Americans, John McCain's and others, obtained data from Ukraine. They totally went and they surveillance entire Ukraine. The total surveillance of the entire Ukraine. Surveillance. They surveyed minerals, everything that could be found inside of Ukraine, and wanted to estimate the actual wealth of one. And once they came with results and presented them to the Russian side, the Putin literally started to cry inside of our house. He literally started to cry inside of our house to please help Russia. The wealthiest part of the Ukraine, as you see, is right in Donetsk, in Crimea. It's exactly in the eastern part of Ukraine. And that's what the Russians wanted. From minerals to soil, earth. Ukraine is a mecca for farming. And make no mistake, American Jews went insane when they heard about what kind of a wealth is inside of Ukraine. Crazy. Now, within the Illuminati circle, the wealthiest people, the most influential people are Jews. And they are greatly overrepresented. They are overrepresented. On average, when compared to other, they are greatly overrepresented. Financially wise, as well as numbers wise. Because American underground politics mostly consists of Jewish Illuminatis. This is just the way it is. Especially if it concerns the part of the world that Jews have influence or interest in. Ukraine, historically looking, was part of the world where Jews have great ambitions. From trade, slavery trade, and all the way today to land deals with the Russians. Jews played business with the Russians. Jews played major, I'm going to say even a main role when it comes to the Russian economy. This is just the way it is. Jews have their own country inside of the Russia. They have their own state. I don't know how many of you are familiarized with that. Now, I did mention you Khodorkovsky. There is an unwritten rule between Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, Jews in general. Ashkenazis are Eastern European Jews. Their homelands, Russia, Ukraine, Poland, whatever country inside of Eastern Europe, or in the Western Europe, if it's a Western Europe, are not their primary homelands. They do refer to them as a homelands. But their main homeland is a state of the Israel. What exactly that means? That means they have a indirect, not the direct but indirect connection with one another. Russian Jew is through the Israel, through his faith, Jewish faith, connected to Ukrainian Jew, and vice versa. Now, the first one who came to conclusion that it would be beneficial for the Russians during a massacre of Ukraine to have as a president a Jew, Ashkenazi Jew, were Russians who historically, in some circles, had a problem with the Jews. Russia historically at the same time hath persecuted Jews and at the same time have dedicated Jews even a republic, land in the Russia that would solely be reserved, dedicated to the Jews. And due to crimes which Russians committed in Asia, through Kazakhstan, through Chechnya, through Abkhazia, through Poland in Eastern Europe, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Baltic states, and so on. Joseph Stalin Georgian, actually I think he was a Gruzin, Georgia, born in Gori, Georgia. He was extremely unpopular individual in certain groups of the society for committing genocides against mainly Ukrainians through the starvation. But from what I understood, also was a famine, a starvation on the Russian side, whom, however, they attributed to associate of Joseph Stalin. They claimed he was Lavrenti Beria, that he was worse than a Joseph Stalin, and that he was Jew. I don't care how much he was Jew. I don't care if he was worse, because if he wanted to be worse, he probably couldn't be worse. I am suspicious about Joseph Stalin is origins of the Georgian origins too. I don't know anything about this stuff, and to tell you the truth, none of us, none of you, nobody fucking knows, other than deep Russian state, who really Joseph Stalin was, and etc., etc., etc. There's a lot of stuff written about these people, a lot of blah 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 blah, but there is one thing that is certain. Russian used in the history, throughout the history, anywhere from Germans to the Jews to this guy Stalin is from Georgia, etc., etc. All kinds of people blamed them for all kinds of genocides they were guilty of, and those genocides were genocides committed in Alaska, through Siberia, through Central Russia, through Abkhazia, through Eastern Europe, throughout the Eastern Europe. He loved the Tatars. He exterminated Tatars from Crimea. These people are massacrists. And guess what? There never was an authentic Russian. Did you notice this? It never was a Yeltsin or never was a Gorbachev that would do this stuff like this. Did you ever notice people this shit at all? Even the fucking Khrushchev was half Ukrainian, with that shoe that he was smashing on at United Nations, how he's going to bomb the United States and I don't know what. Did you guys ever notice this shit? Putin is a natural talent for the deep Russian state. Ashkenazi Jew. A perfect guy for the job. You don't understand, guys. Everybody knew this stuff. Nobody talk about this kind of stuff like the way I talk to you right now about these issues. But between Ukrainian state And between the Russian state, size-wise and power-wise, Ukraine is a little ant when compared to the Russia. And so what happens when the two Jews meet in Illuminati circles? What exactly happens? Well, the Ukrainians claimed, oh, no, I told Ukrainians, get yourself a fucking Ukrainian. Get yourself Ukrainian. Don't play with the Jew. Don't play with the Jews, with the Ashkenazi Jews. Don't play with this stuff. Don't play with it. It is hard to resist the temptation of involving Jews as presidents in a presidential seats during a major crisis, because, especially it was because of my case, the way Americans, British monarch, Romanovs supported the Russian side. It looked like that if you did not cooperate and see yourself in Russia, not only in Jews, but through Jewry into Russia, you were a neo-Nazi automatically. And they labeled a bunch of governments as neo-Nazis, and before you know, they had a war on their doorsteps. Governments that border Russia. Just as simple. So it became extremely tempting, supported by the Israel and United States of America, raped, to see Jew as the best, most suitable candidate for the presidential seat in whatever country from Eastern Europe you were. And then there was that other problem that Ukrainians have. Ukrainians have a lot of barabichka. A lot of barabichik they have. They have this people that are evil like a motherfuckers. And they just see themselves inside of Russia. They just don't want to alienate themselves psychologically, mentally from past and see themselves in presence. One of those kind of barabichiks was the president who gave Vladimir Putin as a gift Crimea and Donetsk before he escaped to the Russia. And so the only thing Zelenskyy did was Zelenskyy was riding the wave provided for him by Israel, by United States of America, by Britain. Wherever he appeared, he was seen as reputable, as he was literally selected by the Vladimir Putin for the job. Respected, opposed to what should have been Ukrainian. You see, and that's that temptation I was talking to you about that won the Ukrainian side, and they decided that because it's going to be a big war and it's going to be a Russian minority, they took the same strategy as the Russians have done it in the past. They're going to be using a Jew for the job. But this is the unwritten rule that I have spoken, that I have talked to you about. When the Jews from different countries meet at the same table, what happens? Well, what happens is that there's a big difference between Zelenskyy and Putin, between Ukraine and Russia. You see, Russia commenced ethnic cleansing of Ukrainians long before the war started on Ukraine in 2014. They started to cleanse Rostov-on-Don, Shakti, Belgorod, Kursk, all this area, entire area, they started to cleanse from Urupinsk all the way. This was all Ukrainian. They started to cleanse the other side of on the Russian side of the border. Cleanse. They fucking delete you, man, like a joke. They settled 10 Russian families next to your home, wherever you were, and make you, by the way, possibly even disappear some fucking place. Or get you killed. I saw this stuff about how this stuff went on. And so now the two Jews meet at the table. And one doesn't have what it takes. One is just a Ukrainian Jew, and the other one is a Russian Jew. Very, 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 very different story. Because if his Jewry business, I'm talking about Vladimir Putin, somehow does not work, and the plan falls apart, and it becomes evident that he is actually working maybe even for the other side, the Russian deep state makes one disappear on a heartbeat. They are in control. That's that big difference. That's that main difference. That's why Russians can play Jew, but Ukrainians cannot play Jew. Ukrainians depend on British, depend on Americans, even on Israel in this case, and are totally controlled. And through the Jew, it was Ukrainian who were also involved from beginning. They had two Ukrainian candidates who was also told to fuck off, to get lost, or Ukraine is not going to get any kind of opportunity, any kind of support. That's how they treated Ukrainians at the beginning of these negotiations. And that's how Zelenskyy became Zelenskyy. From the day one to the day to very today, that's 3 years and a half, nothing as was promised was ever delivered to Ukrainians when it comes to Air Force, when it comes to fighter jets. Nothing when it comes to NATO troops inside of Ukraine was ever realized. They promised there will be NATO troops inside of Ukraine within 1 year. That never happened. And so what did happen was Zelenskyy continued to purchase time. And America continued to portray time with our European partners in forms of US dollars. So now there are two ways to get the war going. You can portray time in a form of victories, or you can portray time in a form of dollars, costs. This is the same shit like go to work. If you go to work in a state company, they might be happy with you just appearing at the job. If you go to work for a private company, they don't get paid unless the job is done. And that's the main difference between the Russian Jew and between the Ukrainian Jew. The Russian Jew can be taken away from the picture at any time if it's not convenient for the Russian deep state. The Ukrainian can be also taken away at any time, but he did extremely well this job because the Ukrainians feel satisfied with what they have. If they wouldn't be satisfied with what they have, they would have asked Joe Biden within 1 year if they know anything about me. They would have people ask questions during news press conferences. We probably would not even see Donald Trump anymore anywhere. We wouldn't see any of these clowns anymore. I could say the same could have been done with Donald Trump, but this war was lost under Joe Biden. Joe Biden was the one that did destroy Ukraine in this war. And Donald Trump is just getting it done. That's all he's doing. At least he's trying to do. At least he's trying to do. Donald Trump played two sides. Donald Trump played one side as a liberator of Ukraine, and he played another side as a supporter of Russia. Based on a timing, based on what we see is taking place, I would not consider the side of the liberator in any way. And even if something happens that he was to act tougher, this guy would do this only under the pressure of American deep state, of the US government. That's all there is to it. There is no Joe Biden the way Joe Biden screwed Ukrainian state, how he screwed the Ukraine, Joe Biden. He screwed one on a multiple ways. Surely enough, his job was to save U.S. economy. I don't question that stuff. But he did chose the very wrong time, isn't he? I mean, I don't know which one of these two was worse, including with Obama, with all these people that barricaded themselves inside of our home here in Slovenia. Which one of them was worse, I don't know. But it doesn't look good for Ukraine, based on what we see. When the two Ashkenazi Jews meet like this at a negotiation table, if it pertains to the Russia, the Ashkenazi Jew that will be representing whatever country that borders with the Russia, or whatever country that Russia has interest in destroying, taking down, will be the one who's going to cooperate with the Russia. And it's never going to be vice versa. That's just a bottom fact because of what I stated to you. Russia can afford a Jew. Ukraine cannot afford. Ukraine doesn't have nothing to rest if they remove one and so on. The first mistake they did is they allowed this shit to go on like this. This was the first mistake they have made it. And it's the mistake that cost them in 2008 NATO membership, and it's a mistake that cost them absolutely everything. And it didn't start with 2008. It started, like I described on the blog, long before 2008. This is just accident that will continue to hunt you down no matter what the fuck you do. Whichever way you turn, whatever you try to do, the contracts are just simply falling apart till the contract Russians and Americans and Western partners fulfill. And it's not going to even stop with this war. After this war, there will be a second war. Western free press, the so-called, it's really a vacuum world of lies and dementia. I told you. They already indicated, they already clearly suggested, they already clearly signaled that after the war there might not even be membership for the Ukraine inside of NATO. European Union. When they started to fuck with issues like this, and I prefer one not inside of the European Union, because it's job to be done first. Vladimir Putin, whenever he arrived to Ukraine, he issued an order. Either you're going to take a Russian citizenship, or you're going to have to leave your home and go wherever Ukraine is. That's ethnic cleansing. Not to mention the stuff that he had done through Ukraine. Ukraine, on the other hand, is playing a nice guy. Ukraine played a nice guy all along. Zelenskyy was out there teaching about how to treat Russian prisoners nicely and send them back home in a top shape. Russian prisoners were living in Ukraine, returning to Russia in a top shape. Ukrainians returning from Russia were returned either in body bags or, I don't know, without kidneys, sick, damaged. You get basically bills coming back home. You get disabled people returning back home instead of healthy young men that Zelenskyy oftentimes left behind, pulling the troops out of the cities such as Mariupol, which ahead of the war he negotiated the tactics on how he's going to leave the people with a certain infiltrators he have used to scam the patriotic Ukrainians so that the Russian military could seize them. That's the program Putin, the two Ashkenazi Jews, referred to as denazization. They refer to the Ukrainian patriots as Nazis. So when you have a state like this, država v razsulu se reče, država v razsulu. This is a state in chaos. And it's not Zelenskyy's fault. You hallucinate about some kind of Israel, how wonderful and this and that and so on. I don't understand you. What the fuck you need your country for? What do you need the Ukraine for? People going out there from Europe, from America, from wherever to die. What the fuck do they go for to die over there for? What do they go to defend, man? This shit tomorrow is going to be the same as it was before. That's a big difference between Ashkenazi Jew from Russia and other Ashkenazi Jews. That's definitely the person you don't want anywhere near president from whatever country you are. Or even, I'm going to say, inside of the parliament. This is all espionage, it's all spy. You do this stuff, you better off surrendering the country to the Russia. That very few can afford stuff like this. I mean, that's crazy. It's totally crazy. The espionage that was run through my case was unprecedented. It was like a highway, like completely freely. They traded with the news. Whichever way it fit them best. Hiring new people every day for the work, for the job. Not only with the United States of America behind, but Russia as well. The way Joe Biden screwed Ukraine was not really through the student loans. All through that hurt. But the way Joe Biden screwed the Ukraine was through what Donald Trump started to do lately. and it's what they claimed during MKUltra, it's going to be way too late. Sanctions against China and Russia, which went on to support Russia from very beginning. Those sanctions that Donald Trump introduced into Ukrainian war make no fucking difference, because Donald Trump is simply desperate to what he refers to as to stop the war. But those are the sanctions that Joe Biden should have introduced into Russian war on Ukraine 3-4 months down the road, or maybe even immediately, per ASAP, because it's actually nobody's business if the European Union countries are still doing business with Russia, since they are in war with one, when a situation like this goes on. The first thing you do is you take care of your own business, and the longer that you postpone the sanctions, that much longer is going to take to get the same result as if you would impose one, I don't know, 3 years earlier. So this war of Joe Biden on Ukraine, whom, by the way, the people, the Khodorkovsky readers, the Khodorkovsky is a great storyteller about how the Putin fucked him and so on. The Khodorkovsky readers, just love the fucking stories about Hunter Biden and Ukraine and so on and so forth. That guy fucked the Ukraine up completely. The arsenal that was delivered to Ukraine was completely outdated, old arsenal, with a great lack of air support and of many other issues. I don't have anything else to say, but yeah, there is a huge difference between Zelenskyy and between the Vladimir Putin. Huge difference it is. Zelenskyy was literally handpicked by the Vladimir Putin, for one thing. And maybe in this video it becomes understandable to you why Russia can afford the Jews and why Ukraine cannot. Or why did Germans, French, and I'm going to say Germans, which is fucking amazing, fascinating, especially due to World War II issues, Holocaust, still didn't want Jews anymore inside of the presidential palace. They didn't want that stuff, because they know that that kind of stuff is deadly. Nobody can afford that kind of stuff. Unless you are big enough, if it's a country that is strong and big enough and can withstand the possible takeover of the bigger, stronger country, then yes, you can do it. You can pay a smart guy, you can go and you can goof and you can fuck in front of the world. You can play your happy merchant if you want. You can do this. That's not a problem. If nobody's going to take on America, nobody's going to take on France, and nobody's going to take on Britain, obviously. But you want to try to fuck with this stuff even in a country like Ukraine that have 40 million people. Ukraine used to have, ladies and gentlemen, 51 million people. It was a different kind of Holodomor that took place after the Cold War. The economic genocide from the direction of the European Union, United States of America. Badly screwed up, badly messed up. The further you're going to take, the further it's going to take you to realize, to understand these issues, the more you're going to get fucked. Talking to Ukrainians, you can go deep down into the pathole of hell with Zelenskyy for as fucking long as you want. It works for Zelenskyy, trust me. It works for America, and it works for your Western allies, because for as long as you don't know what the fuck you want, why should others? If you're happy with what you have, and if you're happy with another war you're going to have. That's just fine. That's not a problem. Zelenskyy is going to be replaced eventually by another individual. And it's interesting because they're always the same cats in it. Always the same fucking cats. When you have a corruption case, it's never a good idea to keep always the same cats. It's always a great idea to ransack, inspect people involved in it. Unless it's a good team of people. And storm them and have them replaced. And trialed for as many people that can see as possible, so that that question mark is removed from the answer. That's how that works. That's how it is. This is why I don't care. I'm not the Jew-seek person. But you got to understand certain issues pertaining to the Jews, or you're going to end up losing your country. Jews today are exempling atrocities of Adolf Hitler to the world by doing it themselves. These are business people. These are very brilliant, very smart people. They always were. And it was historically like this. Not everybody could afford to host Jews. Jews are always the wealthiest people. Lawyers, doctors, merchants, jewelers. Where the money was, that's where the Jew was. You needed the money, you took the loan from the Jew. Always. It's not their fault. It's their form of unity. The anti-Semitic laws today, I'm not going to go against laws that protect human dignity and the rights of people to exist, but the anti-Semitic laws should consider that Israel is by far the most powerful country in the Middle East, with humongous nuclear arsenal, engaging in anti-Semitism directly through extermination of the Palestinian people. For all those stories of yours, and it was evident based on my case, I don't care. I don't care about who's gonna Holocaust, anti-Semitism. These are the main branches, the main government branches, the main business of the State of Israel. And when I say State of Israel, you have a lot of Ashkenazi Jews throughout the United States of America. You have a lot of Jewry in the United States of America. Israel is big. As a country, it looks small. But it's powerful and is greatly, greatly overrepresented within the Illuminati circles. When Illuminatis meet, if it's about anything they could use, they will use it to the full potential, and trust me, you're going to be left behind economically. Your sanity is going to be conditioned, just as it was Ukrainian and through the military memberships and through the economic trade. And you're going to lose because they win. They are greatly, greatly, greatly overrepresented. And the interest they share with their Western colleagues, I should say Western neo-Nazi colleagues, they're identical. They are totally, totally, totally identical. Now, this war in Ukraine, if Ukraine is to lose the territories, its land, this is about territories, but it's about the homeland, will come with enormous cost to the United States of America. It's called trust, global trust. Because obviously already the entire world is looking at United States of America under the loop when it comes to war in Ukraine. The world was extremely familiarized with what's taking place. Now, we do have a people like Donald Trump who don't give a fuck. They found freedom in betraying their own homeland. We do have people like this. These people are not new to the system. These people already existed before, way before. Maybe the best example is of John F. Kennedy, assassin, who from the U.S. Marines eventually he ended up inside of Russia before he returned and got married there, before he returned back to the U.S. Supposedly he was bullied and so on. You know, we had this kind of people already before. It's this kind of element that is extremely present inside of the U.S. government. But maybe it's a question to ask yourself, because just like with the Ashkenazi Jews inside of Russia and inside of Ukraine, the question here is the common humanity. How much can we take? How far can we allow ourselves to go down with it? That's a question. The United States of America definitely is going to become a country that will be non-desired throughout the Eastern Europe. That is a fact. With this war, it's going to be really bad. And it brings me to the British Romano question. Who organized for the return of the Soviet Union, together with Americans, with a certain American circles, already anticipating. I'm talking about the black Democrats here. Don't think it's about the neo-Nazis only. Barack Obama is black. That was 2014 that Crimea and Donetsk, etc. was ripped apart. And Barack Obama was involved with Putin already since my childhood. They knew each other. Well, you would think very unlikely and so on. It's very likely, actually. It's very, very likely, actually. You can't take anyone for granted, whether it's white or it's black or whatever it is. The importance is that this kind of people are challenged, asked, exposed, and imprisoned, and destroyed, to use an example to society that such stuff will not be tolerated. That's all for this video. That's all there is for this video. Oh, I make a deal with playing with my computer. I'm gonna make you a deal right now back, so that we refresh the stuff we were talking about on this. The wealthiest, by far the wealthiest, the richest part of the Russia is located in Ukraine. This is what makes the war in Ukraine. Like, even you should see how Putin was crying like a baby when he learned from Americans about how wealthy actually Ukraine is. He was like a little child. He was willing to give anything in the world. And in a circle of the people who crave for the power like this, Vietnam draft dodgers like Donald Trump was, people who find purpose in betraying the country. He is never going to repay for the Vietnam, Donald Trump. Any draft dodger never is going to repay for anything. That's absolute true. And I don't give a fuck what you do as a politician. As a politician, in my eyes, you're still a nobody. You're just a politician. You're just a paper moth. That's all you are. It's the people who get the job done. It's the people's faith, belief, that powers the country. And to power the Vietnam, to power the wars with a rifle in your hands, it takes more than politician. It takes a willingness to go out there and get the job done. And of course, it also takes a strong politicians. But I don't like it draft dodgers. Let's just put it this way. It's nobody's fucking business what I said about Vietnam veterans. It's nobody's fucking business. I had not the right to say that, but it's my obligation to kick United States of America in the balls and depict one to the world for what it is. So it depends on you how you're going to carry yourself out. Or you're going to continue to carry yourself out like an ass, or you're going to take responsibility for it. Either way, it's going to come with consequences for you, for your country, for your people, for your nation. It is simple as this. I can, but you cannot. I was all over the place. Everywhere. So I can do it. I can say. And I am not lying. It was like that. Exactly as I described on the blog. It's my job to do this. Because of what you have done to me on multiple occasions.